13th, 2025, this Committee of Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is called to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Here.
Present.
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 Thank you. Do we have any guests? Any guests? I do not see any guests. We're going to go straight into an order of legislation. First up is Parks Recreation. This is ordinance number 246-2025 as amended by Council Members Jones, Bishop, Hairston, and Griffin. By departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Parks and Recreation and Community Development to enter into a property exchange agreement with the Board of Education of the Cleveland Municipal School District for the transfer of various properties between the parties to facilitate the efficient use of real estate for public purposes, including construction of the new JFK High School Athletic Stadium at property near the new JFK High School and city-owned JFK Recreation Center, authorizing the mayor and commissioner of purchases and supplies to acquire and convey the properties, and authorizing one or more agreements between Cleveland Municipal School District and the Director of Parks and Recreation relating to the construction and shared use of the new stadium for a term of 15 years and reviewing automatically from year to year thereafter until terminated by either party. Director and Director, you had the floor.
First, I just wanted to say that Commissioner
I apologize.
DeGennaro.
Let me read the amendments.
Yeah, that's what she went to her desk to grab. the
Okay.
amendment.
And it says that this legislation, that there is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. 1, in the title, line 10, and in section 1, line 7, strike JFK and insert Frederick Douglass in both cases, in both places. And this is dated 3/31/25 by Kevin Roberts, Chief Assistant Director of Law. Welcome to the table, Commissioner. All right, please proceed.
Did you want to say a few words to start? No? Okay. Mr. Chairman, so Commissioner DeGennaro is going to go through this ordinance for us. This took many years in the making, and Councilman Jones obviously was very much in support of moving the track and field from the old JFK High School site to the new JFK High School site. And that's what this really accomplishes. The money was through the bond sales in 2022, so that already went through City Council for $2.1 million to fund a portion of the new track and field at the new JFK High School. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Commissioner DeGennaro.
Thank you, Director. So the legislation authorizes a land swap. These land swaps are authorized by state law where the exchange of real estate is determined to be mutually beneficial to the parties. This swap will include 2 land bank parcels to be transferred to CMSD at 773 and 777 Parkwood Drive, and that those 2 parcels will be used for school purposes at FDR Academy. And we've got one additional land bank parcel that will be transferred to CMSD at 3172 West 44th Street, and that will be used for school purposes at the Natividad Pagan International Newcomers Academy. And then in exchange, CMSD will transfer to the city the former JFK High School site at 17100 Harvard Avenue. It's about a 14-acre site. It will be used for community and economic development purposes, and community development is actually in the process of facilitating the redevelopment of this site through an RFQ process. And as Director DeRosa mentioned, the city will contribute $2.1 million in bond funding for the construction of a new athletic stadium at the new JFK High School site, which is located at 15401 Miles Avenue. And that facility will be shared pursuant to a shared use agreement between the city and CMSD.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question. You shared agreement with the city and CMSD. does that mean we will have the same amount of access and the same amount of usage that we have, for example, at Collinwood, where Muni Leagues and other community members will have access to the track, the field, and everything else? And how is that managed? Is that managed by the district, or is that managed by the city?
So the stadium will, it's roughly shared half and half, because we'll use it when school's not in session. And I actually have, I'd like to ask for David Riley to come to the table. He is CMSD's counsel, and he can give us a little bit more detail. But while he makes his way to the table, yes, to answer your question, it will be shared 50-50. CMSD will be responsible for maintenance of the facility.
How will we make sure that we have that codified or somewhere that is clarified in writing? I trust, but you and David may, like I always tell people, hit the lottery and go to Florida, and then people will forget that the agreement is in place. How are we going to make sure that it's codified, or that there's something physically in place for us to support?
So, Mr. Chairman, are you talking about something other than the actual agreement?
Whatever. I just want to
Okay.
make sure that it's something in writing so that we can always refer to
Yes.
that Cleveland residents will have access to these facilities. I can
Yes.
just anticipate a high usage in an area like this, and we want to make sure that Cleveland residents have an opportunity, and how that would work and how that would be facilitated, et cetera.
Okay.
Councilman Bishop, I know that this was talked about in your committee. Did you have any feedback or input?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, as I contemplated on this piece of legislation, I am in support of, of us having a stadium and a track in a neighborhood, especially on the southeast side. But what I wanted to question is that if we're putting in most of the money for this construction, why are they making a term for only 15 years? Why not make it for 25 years? And then at the end of the 15-year term, the city of Cleveland doesn't have a football team, so we're not going to be playing football games over there. So we won't use the stadium very much. I'm assuming that we won't use it very much. But why are we getting shorted just for a 15-year term, Mr. President? That was one of my concerns. Can you comment on that?
Mr.
Sure.
Gennaro?
Through the chair to Councilman Bishop. So the life of, in order to secure our bonds, 15 years was required, but the agreement will renew from year to year beyond 15 years unless it's canceled by either party. So we have the option to go beyond 15 years. 15 years was just the minimum that we needed. It's actually 10 years, but we allowed some time. It's 10 years from the date the construction is completed, so we allowed some time for completion. We allowed 5 additional years. But that's not to say that it'll be only 15 years. It could certainly go beyond the 15 years.
So I think if Councilman Bishop, and I'll let him elaborate, he's saying, why can't we just automatically do 25? Why do we have to go to year after 15?
Yeah, because to the council president's point about nothing's in writing, and the school board can come back in year 16 and say, okay, we just don't see fit, see the reason why us to do this anymore. And the city is basically, we don't have anything. So I was just proposing to maybe look at lengthening the term between the agreement with the city and the CMSD. And I yield, Mr. President.
Sure.
Through the chair to Councilman Bishop, we can certainly consider doing that, but just want to note that the useful life of the turf is 12 to 15 years. So by the end of the 15 years, the turf may need to be replaced again. But certainly that could happen, and we could make the agreement for longer than the 15 years.
One of the things that would be helpful is if we had a comparative analysis with Collinwood. Collinwood, if I'm understanding, is a city-owned facility, not by CMSD. However, it's my understanding, I gotta believe that the term and the usage has been a lot longer than 15 years. So, and then there will be times when renovations and other things will take place on this stadium, and we still want to make sure that we have some of the same agreements. I'm just big on institutional knowledge and trying to make sure that we have things in writing so that we don't run into 15 years later and future councils and future officials are trying to find places for children to play and have access to the track and other things in the southeast side. So can anybody tell me why it wouldn't be good practice to do more than 15 and maybe 25?
Director, do you know how long the agreement is?
I'm through the chairman, or to the chairman. I'm not familiar with what agreement might be in place at Collinwood. I do know that the city does own it. We do have maintenance responsibility, and this summer, the Browns are contributing towards a new turf field. The city's building the track, which is also failing at the same time, as well as the city's putting in about $200,000 to fix the drainage under the field to allow the Browns to move forward with the field replacement, the turf replacement. So, but I wasn't here when that was built. I'm not exactly sure how long it's been in service or what agreements were struck with CMSD to allow them to use that field. I do. You know, if CMSD is agreeable, I see no downside to allowing the city to have more years of use under an agreement, and I think that would be through an amendment to this ordinance. But I also, and maybe David Riley can speak to this, I don't know if they would have to then go back to their Board of Education for an amendment to what they would have passed. But I see no downside for the city of Cleveland to have additional years on it.
Well, let's park it with Mr. Durali, but Mr. Polensek, you kind of institutional knowledge around this, but how long has that stadium been there?
It was Campbell, Mayor Campbell, it was constructed under her, started under her. So I go back, what do we talk about, how many years?
So that's about
Yeah.
2001, so that's
Yeah.
about 23-year-old stadium.
And the arrangement was at the time that and again, it was not my ward, but my ward comes right up to that site. It was in Ward 10. Was the reason why the city built the field is because we just could not count on the Board of Education maintaining the field, because they have a poor track record of maintaining schools. So that's why the city undertook the project to build the stadium. And Collinwood uses it, and Ginn and Glenville use the field as well. Okay.
Did Mr. Durichko, or what's
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Riley.
Mr. Riley, did he want to comment?
Sure.
And I'm specifically interested if he has to take it back to his board, because if we had to, we can always come back and amend this to a higher amount if need be. So I don't want to stall this by trying to send it back and forth to the Board of Education, but I do think, to Councilman Bishop's point, we'd like to have a longer period of time.
Sure. I don't think there's going to be any objection to a longer period of time from the board, but we would have to go back to the board. I wanted to address the language in the shared use agreement that you were alluding to earlier. The way it's basically set up is the school district has use on school days, city has use on non-school days, and that works out. We have school about 180 days a year. That means you have the field 185 days, we have it 180. You have it during the summer and weekends. We generally have it Monday through Friday. That's the default provision. If we don't agree to anything else, I didn't want to be the guy drafting the agreement and trying to figure out what's going to happen over the next 15 or 25 years. The primary vehicle that's created is an operating committee for the field made up of equal members of the city and the school district to schedule the field on a day in and day out basis. So if you want to run youth football on Monday afternoon, that can get programmed in with our athletic director for JFK to make sure that can happen. And if we need to use it on Saturday, we have to come to you and agree to a schedule. So the default provision in the agreement is the city has it 185 days, the school 180. However, I don't expect that to ever be the case. I expect that it's going to be like every other facility that we have, where we're on there when we need it and you're on there when you need it, and the people closest to the situation work it all out.
Thank you. And I want to say that just this present city hall and the school district has a great relationship. So I think that, you know, there's a lot of goodwill right now. But I've learned that having it in writing is always better. So the question that I have before I go to my colleague, Councilman Casey, if we do this, if we make this amendment to 25, then would you have to go back to the board and saying this is the arrangement that the city has put in place? And will that jeopardize anything, or how would that look and procedurally is what I'm
No,
trying to understand.
we'd go back to our board. It would take a little more time. So we bid the project out, and we have a contractor ready to award the project to. We're waiting on council action before we make that award for obviously the money that we need in order to meet the needs of the contract. That would just get delayed a little bit.
All right. I'm going to take questions from Councilman Casey, and then I'm going to confer with Councilman Bishop.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was one of my first questions to Mr. Riley through the chair was how long, if we held this today for an amendment for 25 years or whatever, how long would it take for you guys to come back saying the board's okay with that amendment?
We would be able to consider it at our May meeting, and that would be it gets a little, whenever there's a holiday on a Monday, sometimes our board meetings change, but by the end of May, our board would act.
So you guys would be able to come back with an okay from the board by the end of May?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, to whomever can answer this, the current JFK site that the city's taken over, and I have not been out there, is the JFK building still there?
No,
Or is it-
it's
it's gone?
been fully
been demoed?
abated and demolished.
Okay. And then Mr. Chairman, to whomever, what's the total cost of this? If we're putting 2.1 million in, what's the total cost?
I'd like to ask, Holly Delasante's been working on potentially increasing the cost through some enhancements.
We've agreed to put in $2 million. I have a board resolution prepared for May to ask our board to assign dollars to a phase two, partial phase two, which would increase our share up by 1.5 million. That would bring us to 3.5 million.
Which would take the total cost to 5.6.
Is that what it is? 5.6 million? Okay. And then there's a lot of talk, Mr. Chairman, to the other side of the table about muni football using this, but what about other sports, right? What about if there's an organization that creeps up like we have on the west side near West or whatever, other organizations that service the city of Cleveland, lacrosse, rugby, whatever, soccer, would they have access to this as well, or is it just specific to Cleveland Muni football?
No, absolutely. On the days, the city can do whatever it wants with the field on the days it has control of it. So if you want to play lacrosse or soccer or just have little kids run around in circles, all of it is good. We have no, it's
Okay.
not football only.
And then, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Riley, one last question. Will this, once it's done and there's a track and everything, will it be open to the neighborhood? Like, would residents be allowed to utilize the track for walking or
Yes.
or whatever?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Here's what I think I'm going to do. First of all, I want to make sure I clarify who's responsible for the maintenance. And is it CMSD?
CMSD.
Okay. Councilman Bishop, is that what you understood in this?
Yes, Mr. President. Do we have to make an amendment to put in there just to say, just to state explicitly who picks up the maintenance on this stadium?
Is that in there?
If I may, it's in the agreement that the agreement provides that we have the maintenance. We're
Okay.
fully responsible for.
But that's not in the legislation, but
Yeah,
it is in the
you have
agreement.
no obligation to replace the track or contribute to the replacement of the track or the field. Everything's on the school district.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
So just a question on procedure. If we wanted to extend it to that 25, because I really don't want any delays. I know the construction season is a kind of a challenge right now, and we want to make sure that we get stuff out the door before prices continue to go up. So I don't want to delay. However, will the agreement be where that extra 10 years to get us to 25? Could that be negotiated in that part? Okay.
Yes, I have.
So if we could, Counselor or Mr. DeRosa, when we put the agreement together, how can this council rest assured, or should we, I know I'm not big on always trying to legislate everything to the T, but, you know, how do we make sure that that's in the agreement? How can we make sure that that happens?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that there's an amendment that says a minimum of 15 years. Is it 15 that this outlines?
Yeah, where is that at in here?
Because if you,
Section 9?
if Section 9, let me check it out.
If I may,
Yes.
to the chairman, yes, so Section 9 does say for a term of 15 years and renew automatically from year to year thereafter. So, yeah, I think that's a good solution, is just to insert a minimum of 15 years, and that would probably get us where we need to be.
Because, Mr. Chairman, if we pass it as is, then we couldn't make it a longer term because we're set at 15 years.
Okay, so I would need someone to proffer an amendment. Councilman Casey? Or Councilman Bishop, did you want to proffer an amendment for that? And that's in section 9. And it is under the user agreement. It says the shared use should be at no cost or for a term of 15 years. But what we're recommending is to say at a minimum of 15 years. And we don't want to put not to succeed, but just say a minimum of 15 years, right?
I think so, yes.
So if we just make that amendment to say a minimum of 15 years.
All right, Mr. President, I want to make an amendment to ordinance number 246, 2025. In section 9, in the second sentence, the shared use agreement shall be at no cost to either party and shall be for a term of a minimum of 15 years and renew automatically from year to year thereafter until terminated by either party.
Attorney? Okay, the attorney has that. Do I have a second?
A second.
Councilman Polinsky, a second. All in favor of this amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Mr.
Discussion?
Discussion, go ahead, discussion.
Do we want to consider not saying terminated by either party? Because what happens if we get thrown out, right? A minimum of 15 years, here rolls 16 year 16, and then one party says no, even though things are going well. I mean, we have to think long-term, right? Just because CMSD and the mayor and the council get along now, what happens if that's not the case in 16 years or 20 years, right? And then we have this good program going on there, and CMSD just turns around and says, no, that's it. We met our obligation, you're gone. And I'm not saying that the current board would do that or anything, but do we need to protect ourselves as well?
Council, I was going to, Mr. DeRosa.
Yeah, through the chairman of the councilman, so if terminated by either party modifies the year-by-year extensions, so whatever the term is the term. It's just the 1 year's extensions that if you're going to be into infinity, you need to give an option of eventually terminating the agreement. If, let's even say the stadium is no longer needed because kids don't play sports anymore, they're all on their phones. So that's what it modifies. It doesn't modify the term itself.
No, and Mr. Chairman, to the director, I realize that, but like you said, what if we have you went, nobody plays football anymore, then we just wouldn't use it, right? For me, it's what if we're using it and somebody doesn't want us to use it anymore? Do you know what I'm saying? And then they decide that they want to terminate. And it may be nobody in any position now, but last thing I want to do is pay for half a stadium to go up, have this agreement for 25 years or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden one day, CMSD is not under mayoral control and our kids get thrown out. I'm just trying to think of all the options at the end of it.
And through the chairman of the councilman, Mr. Riley has a point on that.
There are other statutes that mandate or that require school districts to make their facilities available for various purposes. So there are statutes that require us to make our facilities available for recreational purposes. Even political parties have a right to use our facilities. It's Ohio law. I'd have to look up the code section. I haven't read it in a while. But there are other provisions that compel us to make our facilities available.
But Mr. Chairman and Mr. Riley, but not necessarily in this case, maybe. We don't know, right? Because we can't predict the future. I'm just trying to protect us on our side that our kids are going to be able to use this and just not wake up one day and say, hey, you guys can't use it anymore.
Well, it's my understanding that the amendment that we made will give the administration now the flexibility to come up with an agreement that we are expecting 25 years. Because the agreement is, the legislation gives them the ability to negotiate the agreement, which we're doing the legislation and doing that in order to get to them to have a agreement for 25 years. Okay, so the question becomes, to Councilman Casey's point, what if the school district doesn't say 25 years? Then will we have to come back and amend this?
Mr. Chairman, so the way that is proposed to be amended, it's at a minimum 15 years.
Okay.
That'll allow the CMSD to bid the project to have the field ready
Right.
by the beginning of August for football season, and really that's what we're trying to hit for the kids.
Right.
So if they go back to the Board of Education says, we're good with 20 but not 25, that would satisfy the ordinance.
And that's the reason why we did not want to try to delay this.
Yes.
By sending them back to the board to say we wanted to codify or put in the arrangement for 25 years. But the small tweak that we made will give you the ability to put that in the agreement that we have with them.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. And whatever that term is, it'll stand, our shared use agreement will stand for that term. The question that Councilman Casey has relates to the year after year extensions. What we could do is just remove that language altogether so that there are no extensions. But if you have year after year automatic renewals, by its very nature, you need to give each party the right to terminate the agreement at some point.
I would err to say, and Councilman, you know, I know that this is really your discussion, but I would err to say that I would err on the side of trying to make sure that this field is ready by football season. And a month delay concerns me a little bit, but I do want to protect the city as well. I'm willing to live with the amendment that we made in 25, but Councilman Casey, what do you think?
I'll leave it at the chair's discretion.
All right, Chair, what you think? Okay, so we're going to stick with the amendment that we made, but if we could, we would like to make sure that we have, for our policy staff, for that agreement to be sent to council so that we could memorialize it with our committee. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you so much. There's one other thing that I want to make sure I bring everybody's attention that my fiscal staff has brought to my attention, and that is also in Section 8, where it has Subfund 2174, but it doesn't look like that subfund exists. Is it because those numbers got transposed, and should it be Subfund 2714? If someone from finance or somebody can check on that for me, because my fiscal people are telling me that that subfund does not exist. My policy team is telling me that that subfund does not exist, which means that we would have to make that amendment so that we could pull from the appropriate subfund. So can someone verify if that is the case?
Mr. Chairman, we'll figure that out. I don't
And it
think
looks like it
anybody
was
at the
just a
table knows
typo. It looks like it was SF, 20 SF 174, but it does not look like that's a subfund. And what we're wondering is, should it be 20 SF 714?
Mr. Chairman, has your finance person confirmed that it is a transcription? Because we could just amend it now.
I trust them, but you guys are the one that's passing this legislation. I just want to make sure that I verify it, because if not, you guys are going to be back next week trying to change the subfund. Councilman McCormick?
On that note, if that isn't correct, it would have to come back for an amendment, which would obviously not be ideal. So
Let's
can we
smoke
hold the
signals,
vote
yeah.
on this
We'll
piece
hold the
until y'all
vote while
can
you can
confirm
just
that?
verify. Finance should be able to verify like
Yeah, we could do
in
that.
1 minute. And I know they're watching, somebody throw up smoke signals to finance so that we can
Yes, sir.
get an answer real quick, because I really think that it's just, those numbers are, transposed, okay?
Yes.
Thank you, go ahead. Yeah, we voted, all the
Okay,
amendments,
okay.
the ayes have it, so we voted on
Got
the
it.
amendment, and the attorney has the amendment. Anybody else that can verify this? Councilman Polinsik, hopefully we'll get an answer by Councilman Polinsik's line of questioning. Councilman
I don't know
Polinsik.
about that. No, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to just ask a follow-up to the administration. Do we know all the property that CMSD has, vacant property? Do we know what that is? Is there a master list?
Yes. Yes, there is.
A master list of vacant property?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have a master list as well of the vacant schools?
Yes.
Okay. I would request that respectfully through the chair to the CMSD. And because my concern is that I had heard yesterday with the, I've heard the number, and I don't know if, when I heard the number, I was somewhat shocked, well, very shocked, that there could be upwards of 20 additional schools closed. And I'm hoping that the administration, and I wish Jamie was here, was engaged because I drive past Wilson on 55th that's been sitting there for 20 years, wide open. I go past Iowa Maple, which is a mess now, which we asked that you not close, and they closed it anyway. There it sits, it has been vandalized. And I'm trying to really figure out, we're doing some of these swaps, and I'm trying to figure out what the game plan is with CMSD on the land that they own, the vacant land that they own, and also on the closed school buildings. What's going to be the disposition of these buildings? Not only the ones we have now, but if this is true, these rumors of possibly upwards of close to another 20 schools being closed in the city, you know, what is the game plan? What is the interaction with the city of Cleveland on these? Because I don't have to tell anyone what it's like to drive past an abandoned school. It's a reminder of disinvestment in our neighborhood. It's a reminder of abandonment in our neighborhoods. And especially on the east side, this has led to an exodus of our residents with these schools being closed. So again, I'm going to make that request through the chair to CMSD that I'd like to see a list of all the properties they presently own, the vacant properties, and I'd like to see, that's land that they own, and I'd also like to see a list of the closed school buildings that they still have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Majesto, do you have that list of requests? Okay, so if we could get a follow-up with that from Mr. Riley, that'd be great, okay? Mr. President. Councilman Kevin Conwell.
You know, they mentioned, I heard the chairman, Kevin Bishop, mention about the field. And the school system said that they would maintain the field. And let me tell you this, at Glenville, at Bump Taylor Field, again, they have to always ask me, and the last time that field was put in is when me and former council lady Sabre Prayer Scott used our dollars, our residents' money, to put the to take care of that field. So what I'm saying is they have a history of not taking care of these football fields. That's where I'm at, Mr. President, and the one in Glenville is horrible, as well as the track field. Councilmember Mike Polensek again asked me about it last year about the track field. Can we come and help? So if you're not taking care of Glenville and again at Bump Taylor, what makes you think I'm going to believe that you're going to do what's right at the new JFK field? Because your energy doesn't compel you to do the right thing in that direction. That's where I'm at, Mr. President, as well as Chairman Kevin Bishop.
Okay, we'll be paying close attention to that because I know that that's of importance to all of us, okay? Did we get an answer yet from the Finance Department? All right, Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Trying to give us some more time.
I'll ask it slowly. Mr. Chairman, to whomever, who's your energy supplier at JFK?
There's the recreation and then there's the school. Who is the energy supplier for the recreation center and/or school?
sir?
I do not know.
For the schools, I don't know. We have a team that does an RFP for our energy services. I don't know who the provider is.
All right, Mr.
I
Chairman,
could speak on
do you know, Director?
Mr. Chairman, the councilman, so I was involved in those discussions, and I know that there were some issues with servicing the school with CPP, and I do not remember how it got resolved, but I do know that at the time the city administration was encouraging CMSD, and they did, to review proposals from both. And I don't know where it fell, because that was, probably, 5 or 6 years ago at this point.
So if we could do this, if we could put in a request, Mr. Chairman, to CMSD for who their energy suppliers are to all their buildings across the city, if you could. Thank you.
Ms. Majesto, do you have that? Yes. Okay. All right, Commissioner or Director, were we able to find any number?
Mr. Chairman, we're looking into the discrepancy that was identified at City Council table, but I don't have an answer at the moment, so we're happy to come back to the table if you are able to not vote on this at the moment.
Okay, I just want to make sure we get the right fund number for you guys. So
Yes, sir.
if you could just hang out for a minute until you can get that, and then when you give me the sign, and we'll bring you right back up to move it on.
Thank you.
Okay? All right, thank you. All right. Okay, I'll just wait for Director to come up, and we'll pass that as soon as we get the updated information on that budget line. So thank you, guys, appreciate it. All right, bring up building and housing. This is ordinance number 338-2025 by Councilmembers Hairston and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Building and Housing to enter into one or more contracts with Crow LLP for professional services necessarily to perform lead-safe auditor services for a period of 3 years. Is building and housing here? Building and housing is not here. We'll go back to somebody else. Very interesting when someone doesn't come to hear their legislation. And I hope somebody on the administration side is watching the legislative calendar, because we need to have people here, okay? All right, thank you. Next is ordinance number 434-2025 by Councilmembers Starr, Hairston, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Economic Development to enter into a tax increment finance agreement with JSA ACC LLC and/or its designee to assist with the financing of the African Town Plaza project to be located at 7515 Cedar Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio, to provide for payments to the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and to declare certain improvements to real property to be a public purpose. Director.
Thank you, Council President, members of the committee. I am joined here today by Bobby Bruno, one of our commercial development officers. Also want to thank Councilman Hairston for leaving this piece to finance today to kind of keep with the developer's schedule. We are not joined here today by James Sosin, the developer of this project. He is currently in Africa on a trip, but this is, again, very important project. One thing I do want to say up front about Mr. Sosin before we discuss this project. I have met a lot of developers in this town over the course of my work here. Always stuck by, I know that many of you know Linda Warren, former Director of Community Development here, also long time at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, running Village Capital Corp, financing neighborhood projects throughout the city. James Sosin had done some projects in Ohio City. I was having a conversation with her once, and she told me that when we had the Great Recession, 07, 08, 09, right, the sky was falling, that there was only one developer in their entire portfolio who never missed a payment, and that was James Sosin, right? This guy is a Class A developer. He's also a Class A human, and he keeps his commitments. And I think that this is a really great project. And in the part one of this TIF, the DPS committee was able to speak directly with him. But this is a project, African Town Plaza, located at 7515 Cedar Avenue on the city's east side in Ward 5. We do have a letter of support from Councilman Starr, who has been engaged in this. This is the former YMCA site in that. And so, again, this is about a 47,000 square foot, 3,000 three-story structure. that exists along Cedar Avenue that is going to be turned into a mixed-use project that is both residential housing as well as some commercial components to support the African community that is here in our city. And with that, I'd like Mr. Bruno, who's been working pretty closely with the developer, I think he can work through a little bit more of the program.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this will be a mixed-use development called African Town Plaza. The intent is for this to be really the first phase of a larger African village development. And so this will have a mix of commercial uses and community programming. So the top floor will primarily be those residential units. And the second floor will be where a lot of the community programming happens. So there will be a multimedia room and a commercial kitchen that will be utilized for community members to rent those spaces out. But they'll also be programmed by the holding company of the development to teach African culture. So that's basically the programming plan there. And then with the residential units, there will be an affordable component of at least 5 units.
It will be deed restricted for below 80% of very wide median income. And to support this project, we are using tax increment financing. So again, if you look at the overall value of this TIF, it is an existing building, right? This is about a $9 million investment that Mr. Sosin is making in this project, right? And so the estimated value over the course of 30 years is about $2.1 million in terms of the tax forgiveness. Again, as you know, these are investments that we're making of city dollars. And that return on that, we do non-schools TIFs, so the Cleveland Metropolitan School District will benefit to the tune of about a little north of $2.5 million that they would have otherwise not received to this project not gone forward. And so when you combine those payments that go to the school district as well as some of the income taxes that will be generated from the new jobs, and again, you know, we have a pretty rendering on the past page, but I would love to show you a picture of that building today, sitting as an island on Cedar Avenue, kind of falling apart, broken out windows, right? So the city will benefit with an estimated net increase of over $2,692,600 in tax revenues over the period of the TIF. This is a standard CBA, which has been approved by Director Mitchell. There are, again, standard CBA, so this is a lot of things related to Chapter 187, 188 rules, also mentor-protege relationship, and yes, they will be using Cleveland Public Power as their sole source provider as a part of that agreement as well. See, I'm getting better. I'm having the questions off of the past. But again, this is a great project, making a significant investment in Ward 5. You know, in a part of the city that has not seen a lot of investment. And for that reason, we are very supportive of this investment.
Thank you, and I always appreciate how you break down the return on investment that we're getting when we're making that. I think that's, you know, one of the best things that I've seen you do. I really would encourage you to, you know, Councilman Casey's going to ask that question. He's on finance. I think that it would look nice as an accomplishment under the CBA.
Yes.
When you actually say what you just said, that
Yes.
that actually helps bolster our argument that, you know, that Cleveland is benefiting some kind of way. So I just would love to see that embedded in your future executive summaries. You're one of the few people that actually do a thorough executive summary. All right, any questions for this, Councilman Hairston?
Yeah. I have a question after Councilman Hairston.
Councilman Hairston?
He can go ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I'm there to support it, African Town Plaza. You were narrating, so Africa is a big, matter of fact, as you know, it's a continent. So what kind of culture are they doing? I'm just curious. Is it Nigerian culture, Kenyan culture? You said he was in Africa. Africa where? Nambia, Senegal, somewhere, Niger, Chad, Egypt? You just said Africa.
Do you know where Mr. Sosin is currently?
Yeah, Mr. Sosan's from Nigeria, so I know that will be a big focus of the programming there and the culture, but he kind of wants to focus it on kind of the continent whole, is what he's spoken to.
Oh, continent. He's from Nigeria.
Yes, sir.
So what are they going to do? Because I know it's Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba. It was in Nigeria. And you said he was over there. I'd like to know more about it. I mean, I'm there, and I'm excited about it, so I can push it. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to do it. When are they going to start, through the chair, working on the executing on the project? You know, start breaking ground. I mean, I'm excited.
Yes, sir. They have already started some like internal demolition type things in terms of the actual construction of the redevelopment, third quarter of this year, probably late summer, early fall.
Is there any other projects like this in the other cities, African Town Plaza?
I've found one example in, I think, the Seattle area, just through a Google search, but not super common from what I can find.
To the chair, to Anthony Harrison, have they reached out to, because I'm excited, to the schools that's around there? Because they need to know this will help them out better with their history. You plan to reach out to them? Yeah, I just want to meet him. I'm happy about it, especially he's probably Igbo, and that way we can understand it better in the schools because they need to know more about this. So I'm there. I just was being nosy on it as well as excited. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Councilman Harrison, did you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not too much to add. Fully support this piece coming to finance today. As you know, we heard the first part of this previously, the chain of title, and this here actually establishes and sets up the TIF itself for the administration to do what they need to do. I fully support the piece. The developer was here, and as noted, he has done a handful of these old buildings throughout the city, east and west, when other folks, you know, walked away from these sites. I know the condition of this building when he was here the first time, and I was just amazed that he chose to take on this project and invest here in this YMCA facility. So, fully support this piece. Ask the committee for support.
Okay, and Councilman Starr is in favor?
Councilman Starr is in support of the project. Yes.
Okay, seeing no other questions, ordinance number 434-2025 stands approved. Please sign on. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your all's time.
Appreciate it. Great job, Tom. And I'm gonna bring back up Director DeRosa back up for 246. We're resuming 246. So is that, if anybody can give us any clarity on that funding, source? I was told by our policy team and our fiscal team that they could not recognize that as a funding source.
Yeah, so through the chair to the committee, we do want to clarify that there was a typo in the ordinance. It should read 20 SF 714 as
Okay.
opposed to 174.
So we are correct then, so, okay. Thank you. And thank you to our policy team for catching that, or we would have been back here next week on the same ordinance. All right, so therefore, we need a amendment from the table to change the funding code in Section 8 of ordinance number 246-2025 in Section 8 from 20-174 to 20-SF714. Do we have amendment of proffered?
So moved.
Councilman Polinsky has proffered, Councilman Bishop has seconded. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Please make that amendment as appropriated, and thank you so much. Is there any more questions regarding ordinance number 246? All right, seeing no other questions, ordinance number 246-2025 stands approved as amended. Thank you. Please sign off.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to port control. Port control.
Come on.
Okay. Ordinance number 2025 as amended by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend the title in section 1 of ordinance number 1052-2024 passed November 25th, 2024 to change the name of Prospect International Airport Services Corporation to Prospect International Airport Services LLC. There is an amendment, and I will read the amendment. The amendment says there is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. 1, in Section 1, add amended Section 1, lines 10 and 11, strike a rate of $132.63 and insert an annualized rates and charges. And this was dated 4/2/25, signed by Patricia McGinty Aston, Assistant Director of Law. Director?
Good afternoon, Council President, members of the committee. This item today will be presented by Christine Gilmartin, the Assistant Director of Finance and Procurement.
Good afternoon, through the chair. Yes, we're just requesting a name change originally. However, we also noted when we went to Transportation Committee that the amount per square foot was erroneous in our details. That is, the annualized amount is set with the rates and charges, with the airline rates and charges. So we amended that to the proper amount. And going forward, it'll just change every year when we change the airline rates and charges, because this is within the terminal.
So the proper amount is 132?
No, the 132.63 was incorrect for the year stated, which was 2024 in the original document. The proper amount was 129.71.
Well, where is that located at?
Well, I think what they decided to do was to just take it out and put the annualized amount, because we set the rates and charges once a year every January, and those rates and charges are passed annually through Board of Control.
So I want to make sure, are we passing this amendment?
Yes, we are. The actual reason we brought this to the table in the first place was for the name change.
Okay.
Which was Prospect to Prospect LLC. So that's, the dollar amount was just secondary, but it was wrong.
Okay.
So we took that out, but it's still a name change.
Okay. Any other questions regarding ordinance number 229-2025 as amended? Councilman McCormick is not here, but this did pass Transportation and Mobility and was fully vetted. So any other questions? Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 229-2025 as amended stands approved. All right, next up is ordinance number 234-2025 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to employ one or more professional consultants to provide technical support and maintenance of core information technology activities and other related services, and to acquire software for the Department of Port Control for a period of 1 year, with 4 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of Port Control. Director.
Yes, Council President, this item today will be presented by Dennis Kramer, the Assistant Director, Airport Development.
Mr. Kramer.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you. Port Control currently has a contract in place for these type of services. That contract is coming up for expiration. Seeking authority to go out and enter into a contract to again provide these services, staff augmentation, IT support, different softwares and equipment that we purchase through this contract to support the IT functions at the airport, and seeking your approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I know Councilman McCormick is not here, but this was duly vetted in Transportation and Mobility. Do we have any questions on ordinance number 234-2025? Seeing no questions, ordinance number 234-2025 stands approved. Please sign on. All right, next up is ordinance number 238-2025 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend section 2 of ordinance number 402-2022 passed June 6, 2022, relating to general planning, engineering, and design services to add an additional funding source. Director.
Yes, sir. These next two items are related, and each of them will be presented by Christine Gilmartin, Assistant Director of Finance and Procurement.
Thank you.
To the chair, we are seeking approval to add a funding source to an existing contract. The funding source that we are seeking to add is Subfund 6126, which is our passenger facility charges. The PFCs allow us to spend money on anything approved by the FAA, and we're doing some base work on some jet bridges that we'll be obtaining. And so we would like to add just a funding source to an existing contract, which is 6126.
Okay, and this is to support the is it 13?
13.
13 that you guys are, didn't we just pass that, or is that next?
That is next.
Okay.
They're somewhat connected, if you want me to just roll into that piece.
Okay, yeah, if you could, let me read it into the record.
Okay.
All right, the second piece is ordinance number 240-2025 as amended by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance to repeal ordinance number 828-2024 passed September 23, 2024 relating to the purchase of up to 13 passenger boarding bridges at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport and determining the method of making the public improvement of purchasing, installing, disposing, designing, and constructing up to 13 passenger board bridges and appurtenances, and authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into one or more public improvement contracts for the making of the improvement. Director. And we are reading in two of these ordinances, which is 238, 2025, and 240, 2025. Let me read the amendment to. There is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. 1, in section 5 at the end, strike RQS 3001, RL 2025-05, and insert RQS 3001, RLA 2025-05. And this was signed 3/10/25, signed by Kevin Roberts, Chief Assistant Director of Law. Director or Commissioner, please proceed.
Okay. Through the chair, this particular ordinance, we are changing the legislation from a standard contract, which was purchase only, to a public improvement and designing and constructing of these 13 boarding bridges. This way, we are able to get the bridges brought in. The ones that are sitting on the terminal right now will be taken away, and the public improvement, they can do it from cradle to grave, if you will, for all aspects of these 13 loading bridges.
Okay. All right, seeing no other questions, Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a robust conversation in the Transportation and Mobility Committee about this ordinance. It made sense to the committee, and we supported it unanimously.
Thank you. We have these two ordinances. Any more questions? Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 238-2025 and ordinance number 240-2025 as amended stand approved. Please sign on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. All right, we're going to move to public health. All right, public health. And I want to make sure there's a lot of conversation, a lot of amendments, and I'm going to hope and rely on Councilman Conwell to help guide us through a lot of these different things that are before us today, okay? All right, but the first thing is ordinance number 186-2025 by council members Conwell, Griffin, Santana, and Casey by departmental request. Also Moore, Gray, Harsh, House, Jones, Slife, and Starr. An emergency ordinance to amend section 607.15 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, relating to the illegal distribution of cigarettes, other tobacco products, or alternative nicotine products. Director.
Thank you to the chair, city council. So we have a PowerPoint presentation we did in the health committee and DPS. Would you like us to do that today through it, or just answer questions, do you think?
Let's go ahead and see it. Can you fly through it, though? You don't need to spend as much time you did in the health department. Because most of us seen it already.
Yeah. Awesome.
Ready to pass this.
Yeah. Now, this is 186. We didn't get to 188 yet. 188 and 189 look like they're companion pieces. Did you want to just go ahead and talk about 186 and then 187 and then talk about 188 and 189 in its entirety? Or did you just want me to read them all into, why don't I read them all into the record?
Okay.
And then we can discuss all of this in its entirety.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yep,
All
thanks
right.
so much.
Okay, so the next one is ordinance number 187 dash 2025 as amended by council members Conwell, Griffin, Santana, and Casey, Moore, Gray, Harsh, House, Jones, Slife, as amended. An emergency ordinance to supplement the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976 by enacting new sections 235A.01 through 235A.11 and 235A.99 relating to tobacco retail licensing. The amendment reads as follows. There is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. In Section 1, at Section 235A.06B, line B, strike authorized agent and insert agent. This was dated 3/24/25, signed by Stephanie Melnick, Chief Corporate Counsel. The other companion pieces that go with this is ordinance number 188-2025 as amended by council members Conwell, Griffin, Santana, Casey, and Jones, Moore, Gray, Harsh, House, Jones, Slife, Star by departmental request. An emergency ordinance to enact new section 347.21 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976 relating to smoke shops. And the amendment reads as follows. This legislation, there is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. In the title, insert emergency between and ordinance. In Section 2, strike Section 2 in its entirety and insert Section 2, that this ordinance is declared to be an emergency measure and provided it receives the affirmative vote of 2/3 of all the members elected to council, it shall take effect and be enforced immediately upon its passage and approval by the mayor. Otherwise, it shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period allowed by law. This is dated 4/8/25, signed by Nicholas Delaney, Assistant Director of Law. One last companion piece that goes with this is ordinance number 189-2025 as amended by council members Conwell, Griffin, Santana, and Casey, Moore, Gray, Harsh, House, Jones, Slife, Star. And this is an ordinance to supplement the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976 by enacting new section 350.121 relating to window sign coverage limitation and to amend section 3104.02 of the codified ordinances as amended by ordinance number 388-2024 passed April 1, 2024 relating to civil offenses. And the amendment reads as follows. There is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. 1, in the title, Section 1, insert emergency between and ordinance. Number 2, strike Section 4 in its entirety and insert Section 4, that this ordinance is declared to be an emergency measure and provided it receives the affirmative vote of 2/3 of all the members elected to council, it shall take effect and be enforced immediately upon its passage and approval by the mayor. Otherwise, it shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period allowed by law. This was dated 4/8/25, signed by Nicholas Delaney, Assistant Director of Law. These are all companion pieces, and they all deal with tobacco retail. The part of a couple of them will deal with the signage that deals with the signage and everything around the signage that each of these stores have, which sometimes is cumbersome and a problem in itself, cluttered, ugly. And then it also deals with regulating this resurgence of smoke shops that we see happening in the city of Cleveland. And We believe that there are approximately more than 400, approximately 400 to 450, but some of it is what we would like to know. So, Director, what I'm asking of you, because this is a very touchy topic and it's something I know you've had a lot of passion about the last couple of years, and Councilman Conwell, who led the discussion around this, help me understand the problem statement and help me understand how this legislation will help us get to a resolve to reducing or holding some of these smoke shops accountable.
Through the chair, thank you. With me to my left, Mrs. Shannon Leonard, who's the Chief Zoning Administrator in the Department of Planning. We'll start the presentation. We'll answer those exact questions.
Thank you, Council President and the committee here. So I will walk through quickly as I can here regarding this very important issue. So the purpose of the legislation is to regulate the location of smoke shops, to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of all Clevelanders, also to protect our neighborhoods from negative externalities and the secondary effects created by the concentration and clustering of such businesses, and to promote the public health, safety, and welfare by encouraging walkability and prohibiting signage and advertising that is 100% opaque, full window coverage in all business, industrial, and overlay districts. And so just to give you kind of a background information, back last March, the city established Section 347.191 as it relates to the state licensed adult use retail dispensaries as well as the medical marijuana dispensaries. And just furthermore, just talking about how this is related to what we are talking about here today. This section here is very important as it pertains to these actually state licensed facilities. They're highly regulated by the state and subsequently by our zoning code. But some of the items that the state regulates in terms of advertising specifically speaks to no product likeness to be displayed to the public or directed towards children, no use of cartoon characters or pop icons. You're not allowed to depart from your registered name and using slang terms or similar references to other cannabis products. Suggests or indicates location of product has been falsely endorsed by their division, which is the Division of Cannabis, and then the division itself must actually approve all of their branding. And this is important as it relates to the signage regulations that we are presenting here today. The current regulations in our code mirrors what's available with the state. We allow it in our local retail business districts, but they have to be 500 feet from churches, parks, schools, daycares, rec centers, and libraries. And that's really just to protect the youngest of our residents. Just giving some background information, if you are an actual state licensed facility within the city of Cleveland, you must display this logo here on a window fronting the right-of-way. And this is just giving you a list of, currently there are only 7 legally state licensed retail dispensaries within the city of Cleveland. And I know that's really important because you've probably seen shops pop everywhere that claim to be dispensaries, but they are actually not state licensed. And just give you an example of just what those look like, the actual state licensed facilities, they're not allowed to display any of their products out to the open. So they're a very different type of facility than what we're here for today. As stated, this is part of a 4 ordinance regarding the tobacco, nicotine, accessories, advertising, and public health. So the proposed smoke shop legislation that we're proposing today are for the existing and new smoke shops in Cleveland. There's currently no regulations regarding it. We've not defined it, so that's what we are doing here today. This does state that there were 42 formal permit applications to establish use as smoke shops since January 1st. That's increased to roughly about 100. And what you see here in these 4 images are what a typical smoke shop in our neighborhoods looks like. So from floor to ceiling, they're displaying products of THC varieties, kratom, other varieties of these mind-altering products, if you will. They also have lots of signage claiming to be dispensaries or actually just displaying the products themselves, which is against the law for the state licensed facilities. So a smoke shop is being defined in this section as any retail establishment at which 20% or more of the floor, shelf, and/or display areas, individually or in the aggregate, is used for the sale of smoke shop products such as kratom, CBD, Delta-8, and other cannabinoids. There's a full list in the actual legislation. That's just giving you a sum. It's also regarding tobacco and nicotine products, any kind of electronic smoking devices or vapes, and any accessories to the above, so papers, water pipes, etc. And this does exclude the state licensed marijuana facilities, which are regulated elsewhere. What you're seeing in the image on the right are the new permits in the past 6 months as of March 2025. The additional section in this code will require that any new smoke shop have to be at least 2 miles from any existing smoke shops. So no smoke shop can be located or relocated within 500 feet from a church, public library, public playground, public park, or school. And our department will maintain a map regarding this code section. The additional legislation here for ordinance number 189 has to do with enacting 350.121 to limit window signage covered to a maximum of 25% of all window area. This means that each facade will be considered separately, all windows and glass portions of doors. It pertains to all temporary and all permanent signs, and transparent signs are measured also. And this is important because not just for these types of stores, but these stores as well, is that there's generally full coverage of window signs happening on our business corridors. This is another example. We are working with the law department and the Department of Code Enforcement to understand and determine a plan going forward as it relates to these signs that are calling themselves dispensaries or code shops. There's a variety of ways to do it, either through the building code or even through the business code as it pertains to false and misleading advertising, as these are not actual dispensaries. This is another example of the window signage. And window signage, as this is an example of that, this doesn't just affect our smoke shops, but it affects businesses all across the city. This is not only important in terms of aesthetics, it's also a public safety issue. We did talk to the Director of Public Safety and Chief Todd with the Division of Police, so I would like to enter this into the record that they support how this is a public safety concern more so than just an aesthetics concern. And so that's really relating to the window signage issue. And the reason, one of the questions we had received is, how many violations have occurred?
President.
And there's always been a...
You read what into the record again?
It's from the Division of Police, Chief of Police, stating that they support the legislation for the 25% maximum coverage in terms of public safety. So for public safety, it creates an issue not only for business owners and residents walking down the street where windows are completely covered, but also for police when they're responding to a situation they can't see in, et cetera. And so it creates public safety, or if somebody's operating a legal business, there's no way for them to see in, or if there's cameras that the business has and the police are serving some kind of public safety call, the business can see them, but they can't see what they're walking into. And so,
Ms. Leonard, if I could, because this is kind of why I'm a little confused by this thing. They say THC gummies. They say Delta 8. THC gummies are only supposed to be sold in a legal dispensary authorized by the state of Ohio. Is this false advertising, or what is this? Because that's what kind of has me concerned. Are we really going after this for the reason that they're really opening these shops up, which is to sell illegal weed? And how does this affect that? Because I know the state is looking at Kratom and Delta 8, but I don't think that they've passed anything official yet. But THC gummies is clearly, marijuana gummies that are being sold out of these smoke shops. So under this law, does that give you the advertisement to just go and raid these places, or should the police be raiding them, or how does this law give us more tools to deal with this?
yeah, so I will start to answer that. So I do know that there is a loophole in the state regulations regarding around some of the TH hemp products that the smoke shops are selling, but I will defer to the doctor to answer those more specific questions around the products themselves.
So yes, through the chair, this will allow health inspectors to be in these premises, and basically they have two options. They either get a license or they don't. If they don't get a license, we'll shut them down through a cease and desist. If they do get a license and they are selling one of the lists that of products that are only supposed to be sold in the 6 cannabis dispensaries that are licensed in Cleveland, then we'll refer them to the Division of Cannabis Control if that exists yet at the state level. And it exists, but if they staff it. And otherwise, we'll work closely with the vice unit and police to shut them down.
Okay, on that point, Councilman Polensek.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, and to the Dr. Margolis. My question is this. Why are they being shut down now?
Exactly.
That's kind of where I was going with that. Mike always asks it plain. That's what I'm trying to say. It's illegal.
Yep. Through the Council President to Councilman Polensek. So the products that they're selling, the smoke shops are legal in the state of Ohio based on the products. A lot of the products are not regulated under the FDA, but there is a hemp law that the state passed a couple years ago that is allowing these smoke shops to pop up in every community across the state.
I understand it, but if, Mr. Chairman, again, I'm under a point. If we know that they're selling illegal product now, then my question again is why aren't they being shut down?
In terms of through the chair to the councilman, if for the illegal products, I believe there's an issue with the police department code enforcement in terms of being able to see that they're actually selling those illegal products. I know that we've received complaints that there's actual marijuana being sold at some of these places, but there's an issue with testing in terms of that nature of the difference between the legal hemp that's allowed to be sold versus marijuana, et cetera.
Well, again, I'm not going to belabor the point. I've heard from my colleagues that there are establishments in their ward selling illegal product. At that point, CPD, the vice unit, just as they do with liquor licenses, NEVI, you send in a straw dog to buy it, make a purchase, and once it's confirmed that that is an illegal product, they need to get nailed. End of story.
So through the chair, that's a good segue to, I think, on the next part of the presentation. So 186 is one of the 4 pieces. That's just updating our language to match with the state Tobacco 21 laws. You all remember Cleveland passed Tobacco 21 a few years before the state, and so this is just an opportunity to update our language to align with the state's law. And then 187 is exactly, through the chair, what Councilman Polensek is asking for. So currently a number of suburbs and cities throughout Ohio have health inspections of smoke shops and other tobacco retailers. Cleveland is one of the only big cities and one of the largest city, obviously, in Cuyahoga County that doesn't have these health inspections and tobacco retailers. So 187 would set up a tobacco retail licensing system where every store that's selling nicotine products, smoke shop, gas station, convenience store, grocery store, would need to buy a license from us. That license would subject them to inspections twice a year and complaint-based. And during those inspections, we would do underage buys from 19 and 20-year-olds. We would ensure that the Tobacco 21 sign is up as required by the state law, and then we would make sure that they're not selling or distributing marijuana without an applicable state license. And we'd be able to do that, I think, better than the police because we're coming in plain clothed and our health inspections as part of our health inspections.
And you targeted right on that.
For those stores that don't get a tobacco retail license with us after this goes into effect, just like for restaurants that don't get a license, we would put a cease and desist and work with public safety and law as we do now with restaurants that don't have a license. So I discussed this. If a tobacco retailer has an infraction on our inspections, first violation is $500. The second violation within 36 months is $750. Third violation within 36 months is $1,000, and then that triggers a 30-day suspension of their license. The fourth violation is they are revoked from their tobacco retail license. And these mirror what's happening now in Columbus and Cincinnati.
Could I ask you a point on that? With the fines, these guys make a great deal of money, and I'm not going to say how much on a monthly basis, but I know, really I do know how much they make on the average. do you think the fines are too low, or do you think we need to, in the long run, maybe amend it to make the fines higher? Where you at, through the chair to the director?
Through the chair, I think our biggest enforcement opportunity here is the ability to close them down and revoke their license, more so than the fines, to your point of some of them make so much money that the fines aren't going to deter them, but having their license revoked and having our teams, go out and, chain their doors when they're not following the law, I think will be the most impactful piece of the enforcement.
Okay, that's good right there.
Please proceed.
So that's the end of our presentation, so we're open for questions.
Okay, so before I go into these, I've been notified by our law department, and if she would like to join us to the table, that the reason that we need a couple of these amendments is to actually give us the ability to have an emergency to move these forward. So the two zoning pieces, in order for them to come into effect immediately, we have to make these couple amendments in order to be able to do that. So, Attorney O'Leary, if you could outline why we need those two amendments, and then we'll discuss the other amendments. Councilman Hairston.
At DPS, we added the emergency amendment to the both pieces, just
If
so
you could clarify, Mrs. Heinrich O'Leary, that's one of the reasons that I have consternation, because I'm getting like 5 different messages.
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee, so both of the zoning ordinances were amended to be emergency ordinances in DPS, and so that amendment is attached to the legislation. But we also needed to really clarify in the legislation the reasons for making it an emergency ordinance. So that's what is before you to make a motion.
So the problem statement is pretty much what this is doing.
Right,
Which
like,
is what I started out
yeah,
saying. We
I
need to
have
make
it
sure
here.
that we have
Yeah.
the problem statement of what we're trying to make this an emergency to address. Okay, Councilman, or do you have anything else, Ms. O'Leary?
Not on that, it's just to make these amendments to 188 and 189.
Okay, so.
They're whereas clauses.
There are whereas clauses, and it says, and I think I could read them out, and then somebody can so move to proffer the amendment. But it basically is under ordinance number 188-2025. The amendments that need to be proposed, it says, whereas data establishes that an overconcentration of smoke shops as defined below currently exists in the city, and the city has received approximately 100 permit applications to establish use as smoke shops since January 1, 2025. And whereas this ordinance constitutes an emergency measure providing for immediate preservation of the public peace, property, health, or safety, in that the proposed enactment of new section 347.21 is necessary to protect neighborhoods from and to avoid further overconcentration of smoke shops and negative secondary effects arising therefrom, including but not limited to an increase in the availability of smoke shop products as defined below. Is there anybody that would be
Mr.
willing to
Chair.
proffer that amendment? Yes.
I'd like to amend, are we doing both?
I'll read both into the record.
Okay, so you want to
This
start
one
188?
is 188, and then if I get a second, we can move this one. and
Thank
then
you,
I'll do
Mr. Chairman. I'd like to amend ordinance 2025 to add the amendment as you just read.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilwoman Santana, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The second amendment is pertaining to ordinance number 189-2025, additional amendment to be proposed and approved at the Finance Committee that is needed for the amendment above, approved by DPS on 4/9/25. And it's inserting the following whereas clause to read as follows. Whereas this ordinance constitutes an emergency measure providing for the immediate preservation of the public peace, property, health, or safety, in that it limits the amount of window coverings to increase visibility for first responders to assess an emergency and for individuals to see potential hazards such as oncoming vehicles. Now, therefore, this is Ordinance number 189. Do I have amendment to proffer?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to amend ordinance 189, 2025.
Do I have a second?
As-
Second, Councilman Jasmine Santana. It's been proposed by Councilman McCormick. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I do want to make sure that we add for the record, if we could, the letter from Chief Dorothy Todd. If we can add this to the legislative file as well, just to make sure that people understand the justification of why we believe this to be an emergency ordinance. Okay? There is one other piece that I believe is a discussion topic, not necessarily going to be a slam dunk amendment, but we'll talk about that as we move forward. And once again, those amendments that we talked about have been passed, proffered and passed, but there is a conversation that was picked up from the Health Committee that in Section 1, after Section 235A.02, to potentially offer the next amendment, which is 235A.021, which is a limitation on the number of tobacco retail licenses for smoke shops. And it was notwithstanding any provisions in this chapter. To the contrary, the total number of tobacco retail licenses issued in any year shall not exceed, that was left blank, or notwithstanding any provisions in this chapter. To the contrary, the total number of licenses issued in any year to smoke shops as defined in Section 347.21 of these codified ordinances shall not exceed, and that was left blank as well. This was the discussion that I believe, Councilman Conwell, that you led around potentially capping the number of smoke shops in the city of Cleveland. If I recall the discussion, Councilwoman Santana also had questions about if that 2-mile radius is too short of a distance. So I just, I do watch the committees when I'm not there, and I want to make sure that we do give us the opportunity to have that discussion, and you, sir, give your professional opinion on whether you believe this amendment is necessary, and then I'll defer to the chair on the robust nature of the conversation if we believe we should move forward. Please proceed, sir.
Through the chair, thank you so much. The 2-mile radius was selected because it's currently the largest radius of any of our different zoning pieces that we have in the city of Cleveland, and so that's why 2 and not 2.5, 3 or 4. If you were to amend that now, of course, we'd have to go back through Planning Commission. We don't want to do that. But we do, the 2-mile radius is, we discussed with Councilman Harsh, is 4 pi squared miles, so like 12, 13 square miles. So that is a pretty wide area, and that density, that zoning restriction will be our most powerful tool going forward as some of the smoke shops choose to cease operations through one way or another, and new ones try and come into the market. It will be that piece, the zoning piece, 188, that's probably the most powerful tool we have compared to putting a cap on the number of tobacco retail licenses. That's our opinion, at least at this point.
Yeah, I concur with the director. 2 miles is good. I don't want to go back in there, especially through the chair, to the director. People are watching us right now, so we have time constraints. So I want to move forward with this. We'll measure it to see how it works, and if we need to come back to the table, then we'll use lessons learned. I think the 2 miles is appropriate, sir.
Okay, now this proposal was to think about capping them. Do we know how many exist approximately in the city of Cleveland? And it's my understanding that the reason we wanted to move expeditiously is because we're getting hundreds, if not tens by the day. So did you want to weigh into that, Ms. Leonard?
Yeah, Council President. So the buffer that was, the 2-mile buffer that you see there on the image, I apologize, I didn't have it printed out or added to the presentation, but essentially what you can see is based off the applications that we have received, there's really nothing left in terms of any applications come in after this is passed for them to be located without being denied. And if they were to choose to appeal, they'd go through the Board of
Good. So
Zoning
that's really
Appeals.
the whole city.
So the whole city is pretty much, additionally on this map, I have just where all the applications have come in. So every single ward has had a permit application come in of some sort. And so the darker one is the only one that's been approved to date. These are all the applications that are pending. They may be in design review
Do they
or
have
city
that first
planning.
screen? You have that on the-
I don't have it on the screen.
Can
I'm
we
sorry. I can go back to the
request
image.
that?
Yes.
If you could just give that to Ms. Magistro, and then she'll make sure she gets it to all of us.
Yes.
But you said it's 400 to 600 shops right now.
That we believe off of just Google data as well as just data generally that the city has
And this is that
obtained
map?
from. This map is a little bit different. This map was from prior to going to Health and Human Services. That map was mapped as of Friday as well as this one, which is showing what that 2-mile buffer looks like around every application that's come in, as well as those that fall within that 500 feet. So you have 2 buffers happening here. You have to be 2 miles away from any existing shop or other shop, but you also have to be 500 feet away from a school, a rec center, a park, a church, et cetera. So that between the 2 miles and the 500-foot buffer, that limits where any of these can go at this point.
And how many dispensaries do we have so far?
The state licensed dispensaries that we
8 to
have that
10?
are 7.
7?
7 are permitted as of today.
In Cleveland?
In the city of Cleveland proper, that's correct.
Okay.
Those are separate.
Sure, I get the question. Just one other thing. So in your opinion, we don't need this amendment,
Through
this
the ch-
extra amendment for the cap, the total number of tobacco retail licenses?
I do believe that the buffer is the strongest
It's
tool
the
that we have.
strongest tool to have. So-
Similar to the small box that we did previously.
Okay, Councilman Conwell, this happened in your committee. You're more intimate with this conversation than I may be able to. What, did your committee have any thoughts about capping this? And did you
Well,
have any message to bring from your committee?
Director talked with me about it. He said if we got it passed today, I think the mayor will sign it tomorrow. Is that correct, Duty Chair?
All right.
Okay, and then therefore we would need that, that piece right there, that
Okay,
tool.
so if I'm hearing that the buffer is the strongest tool, if I'm hearing that our goal is to try to move this expeditiously because they're growing fast, we don't want to go back to planning commission, then we don't
Right,
need
right.
this amendment.
Yeah.
Right.
Is everybody in favor of that?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to move this forward without this amendment to 187-2025. I just wanted to make sure we revisited that because I know that was a hot topic in the committee. And of course, if we see that we're not effective, then we could come back and do this. Director, one last thing that I have, are we staffed up enough to do this? I'm tired of going into some of these stores and seeing green meat. And I want us to, I'm a strong believer in blocking and tackling. You're a great guy. This is never anything personal, but do we need to invest in this? And what if our good friends from DC continue to cut our health department grants? Will you and how would you have this? Because just having a law in the books that not get executed is not good.
Yeah, no, through the chair, thank you. So right now, we've got 6 local code and health inspectors who will add this to their workload, but we're also assigning 4 additional members of our team who will be supporting getting this off the ground and doing those inspections. We already have the funding ready to go to hire the interns over next summer, which would do the underage buys. And then we've got a foundation, the Preventing Tobacco Addiction Foundation, that has pledged $50,000 to $100,000 to help support this work. And then this revenue will bring in maybe $150,000 to $200,000, and we will come to you for 2026 budget to ask for additional positions, depending on how the work is going.
Okay. Just real quick, every once in a while, not often, but every once in a while, I like a good cigar. We inadvertently punishing some of these cigar shops that have been operating for years. I don't want to start squirting them out, but we got several cigar shops that's been operating for years. Now they're going to have to get a retail license, and they've been good business partners, and now they're going to have to pay what is it, $250 or what is it?
Through the chair, we're estimating between $300 and $500. Columbus and Cincinnati each do $500. So
So this is precedent. It's not just
Right. Yeah, yeah, and I think it depends on what the cigar lounge, if they're selling it so people can take the products to go, they would have to get a license, just like gas stations, convenience stores, grocery stores would have to do this as well. But like you said, this is done in a number of jurisdictions across Ohio already.
Well, because the popular thing now is cigar lounges. And I get a lot of requests for people that want to open cigar lounges. And, you know, that's a pastime that some people have. And I don't want to get to the point where we're starting to try to over-restrict the bad actors and the people that are good actors that just like to smoke a good cigar now have to be penalized. So how are we going to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah, no, through the chair, yeah, no, we're happy to work with, and most of these folks are going to be good actors. In fact, when we did our visit to the smoke shops and with Councilwoman Santana and Councilman Conwell, one of the smoke shops that we went into, our favorite, said very clearly, like, I would welcome health inspections because my competitors are doing some really shady stuff. And so the cigar lounge, it would just be their annual or biannual inspection from a health inspector. They have no other inspections that are happening in their facility. So this would just be part of operating a smoking business in the city of Cleveland.
Okay. Any questions? Councilman Conwell was in Health Committee, and then any other questions? Councilman Polensek or who else? Councilman Casey. All right. Councilman Conwell, you have the floor.
Yeah, what if the state, matter of fact, if some states would to the chair, have implemented dealing with tobacco products, they have implemented a bill to stop local governments from regulating tobacco products. Like in South Carolina, they came up with, they got together as well as the tobacco shops, and they got together with the smoke and vape shops, and now there's a bill out there, I don't know if it's passed yet, to stop us from regulating what we're regulating now. And I know we have home rule, but in Ohio, it's only when it benefits the state that it comes, you know, they crack down on home rule. So that's one of the risks that we have out there, to the chair, to the director. Director?
Yeah, through the chair. So the state did pass preemption for local tobacco regulation. The city of Cleveland was one of 19 jurisdictions that sued the state, and we won. So we won in Franklin County Court. The state appealed, and they've heard us in the next level of court, and it looked favorable that we would win that court case as well. But because we are one of the 19, and I think adding jurisdictions that entered that lawsuit, we're still able to do this local control. And the reason that the judge sided with us is because the state has no state framework. So once the state passes a statewide framework, that could change, but there hasn't been any proposals yet.
Okay, that was my biggest issue.
All right.
State stepping in.
Thank you. Councilman Polensek.
Thank you.
Councilman Casey and Councilwoman Spencer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, my honorable colleagues. Mr. President, that smoking cigars will stunt your growth. Remember that now, okay? To the director, you mentioned there's 7 dispensaries now. Can we have the location, the name and locations of those? I'd like this. I'd like the legal ones. Yeah, if you could provide that to us, or the PowerPoint. Then as it pertains to this tsunami of individuals trying to come in now, can we get those locations as well? We'd like that. If we could, I'll request that through the chair, that we can have that. So the legislation that is in front of us today, anyone who's selling tobacco products in the city of Cleveland would fall under. So all these corner convenience stores, all these other characters that are peddling cigarettes or tobacco products would have to comply with the legislation. And you're telling us at the table, based on the council president's inquiry, that there will be at least 2 inspections a year on those establishments, correct?
Through the chair, correct.
Okay. So that's not just to look at tobacco products, that's to look at health-related or just tobacco products?
Through the chair, so it would be as part of the tobacco retail license. So we'll have a checklist, and we'll add we'll add the window advertisement piece from 189 into that checklist.
Okay.
But primarily, it's for the 19-year-old underage buys, the sign,
yes,
and then to make sure that what they're selling is legal.
Well, I obviously support the legislation, because this is what I have come to the conclusion here, being as long here as I've been. is that the quality of life in our neighborhoods is diminished. It has diminished every year that I've been here. And there comes a point when you just ask yourself, with the proliferation of the smoke shops, with the proliferation of liquor licenses, which again, the state is in the liquor business. So we all know what it's like trying to close a liquor establishment or take out a carry-out establishment. It's like you have to part Lake Erie before you can get a liquor license removed in this city because the state makes revenue off of that. But at the end of the day, all this is adding and abetting the decline in our neighborhoods and the quality of life in our neighborhoods, especially for children. So I support this legislation. I am concerned, though, as the council president indicated, about enforcement. We have health codes on the books now. And I don't have to tell you what some of those places that operate in our neighborhoods are like now. You know, we all refer to them, and the northeast side is, as I've said so many times before, is the Dr. Seuss stores, the green eggs and purple ham. And so we need to make sure that we're going to enforce the law in this city, that we're going to enforce the law. That's what I find so troubling. We have laws in building and housing, we have laws in health, but it seems like nothing ever gets enforced here. And then we're on the firing lines when we go to neighborhood meetings. So I'm supportive of this. I want to thank my colleagues who've been engaged in this process, the chairman of the committee, Councilman Conwell, all the other members, because I believe all members, I'm not aware of any member, even the cigar smokers are not, they want to see something happen. They want to see something happen here. So again, enforcement, and if we could get that less respectfully, I'd like to see who are the latest characters that are applying for permits in our neighborhoods. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Casey and Councilwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the director, in regards to 189, right, under Code 3104, I understand, Mr. Chairman, to the director, you may have some information regarding enforcement of that in the past. I know it didn't fall under the health department, but do you know how many tickets were issued or citations were issued under that code, which has already been on the books?
Right. Yeah, so, well, you start, yeah.
Yeah, so I can kind of answer that, and he'll give you the exact number from the email. But I just want to clarify that the way that previously that they would record that data into the Excella permitting system was not very clear. So I believe the number that he has to do with exterior maintenance. The window signage issue has become an issue over time, generally speaking, and that's because under previously, if you had a temporary business information sign that was in your window, there wasn't a permit required unless you were in a design review or landmarks district. And so what this legislation does is close that loophole on the temporary window signage. Temporary is generally 30 days, no more than 4 months in the sign code, and that became an enforcement issue. So Building and Housing was never able to really articulate that 25% because the temporary window signage didn't technically require a permit.
Mr. Chairman, to the director, do you have a number?
So through the chair, I do not have a number directly to that.
Okay.
The number I gave you was regarding all citations for external maintenance for mixed use or retail buildings in the last 3 years from Building and Housing, and that was 2,103.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, to the director, I want to reiterate heavily, Council President and Councilman Polensek, I am not a fan anymore of passing legislation just so that we can grab headlines and then no follow-up to it, right? That looks good in the newspaper, but it doesn't sit well in the neighborhoods. If this, Mr. Chairman, to the director, if this isn't enforced, I'll lead the charge to repeal the whole legislation and to pull it back, because there's no sense passing ordinances or laws and not having somebody to enforce them. So, Mr. Chairman, to the director, are you sitting here today saying that once this goes into effect, within a certain time period, you'll have enough inspectors to start enforcing this to make sure that this legislation, which has a lot of teeth to it, can be and will be enforced?
Through the chair, short answer is yes. I think the longer answer I gave earlier was that we've got 6 folks ready to do this work. We had an estimate of 400 to 600 tobacco retailers. As you've seen, that number is growing by the day. And so I fully expect to bring this conversation to you for budget 2026 to ask for additional help to do this work.
Right, Mr. Chairman, the director, look, I don't think we're looking for miracles overnight. We're not, we know that you're not going to be able to hit 400 to 600 spots, in a week. But we are going to be looking for progress, definitely looking for progress. And Mr. Chairman, the director, I would highly recommend that maybe on a bi-monthly basis that you supply whatever statistics you can in regards to this, because this is a good piece of legislation for our neighborhoods, right? And this is something that could aesthetically change a neighborhood, and we believe for the better. But we don't want to have this on the books and then not be able to enforce it either one way or the other. And then my last question, Mr. Chairman, to the director is, if this is all civil, correct? These are not criminal tickets that will be written, right?
Right, correct.
And then, Mr. Chairman, to the director, what's the process of enforcing that, of collecting those dollars, or?
Yeah, through the chair, it's a great question. So we've got a process in place through the restaurants where we do the cease and desist if they reach the fourth warning. But we don't currently have a process in place for collecting fines for restaurants, because that all is worked through the state. We do have a process of ticketing for our other local code violations, but this is one of the many steps that we'll have to start right away to put that process together.
So, Mr. Chairman, to the directors, you sit here right now. So if this goes into effect next Monday, right? We'll just say, hey, everything's signed off next Monday. Next Tuesday, somebody gets a ticket, right? Because you got one of your 6 people out there, somebody's overly aggressive. Somebody writes a ticket, there's no way currently to collect that fine.
Through the chair, the legislation for 187 is written that it will go into effect 180 days after passage.
Okay, so 180 days after passage. On the 186 months? So 181st day, somebody gets a fine, right? Is there a process? How do they pay that, and where does that money go?
Through the chair, well, Mrs. Leonard has a comment there. I'll let her.
I think, could you clarify, are you talking about just the DePacker retail license, or are you talking about window signage?
Yes, both.
So for the window signage, as soon as this goes into effect, if somebody is cited, they would go through Building and Housing to make that appeal. It would end up at the Board of Zoning Appeals, but they would pay under the Cleveland zoning code requirements around the window signage. In terms of the tobacco retail license, the 180 days is to give you all time to get that licensing program in place.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, to the director, under the window signage, if somebody gets cited next week, right, obviously, what is the process? I mean, is it going to be the health department that could cite them next week? Is it going to be Building and Housing? Does the ticket, even if it's issued by the health department, does it still go to Building and Housing?
So through the chair, so our full the plan with this is when we are doing tobacco retail licensing, that the window signage requirements, the new law 189, would be part of our checklist and part of our work. The reason it's 180 days is because we need to get the word out to all of our stores that this new law has passed, and to have that application, have them apply, have them pay for the license. And so in the meantime, how is the window enforcement being regulated? We'll work with Building and Housing to figure that out, and I'll circle back with you on an answer.
Okay, so currently, right now, we don't have that process, right? So as soon as this passes, does the health department have the ability to go out and cite for the windows, Mr. Chairman, to the director?
Through the chair, I'm
Director,
not sure.
We
Yeah.
should know. I mean, we're coming here with the
Yeah.
legislation, we're passing it, somebody's got to know. I mean, are we giving the health department the ability to cite for the windows? If so, is that?
Through the chair, the answer is yes. to that question. Yep.
So you have the ability. When can you start citing for windows then?
Through the chair, our plan was to do that as part of our tobacco retail license plan.
So for the next 180 days, nobody will be out citing for windows then, because
Through the chair, that will continue as part of Building and Housing. They did 2,103 citations
in 3 years.
In 3 years.
Right.
For exterior maintenance for the retail and mixed-use stores.
Okay.
If I could ask the attorneys on that point, I thought that's why we were doing the emergency ordinance,
Yeah.
because soon as the mayor
Let me-
signs
I
this,
wanted
then
to
it goes into
clarify.
effect, which eliminates that 180-day period.
Yeah,
Which
to-
is why we proffered the amendments today.
To the council president and the councilman's concern, so these are zoning code pieces in addition to the tobacco retail license pieces. So under the zoning code pieces, by making them emergency ordinances, they will be in effect as soon as that the mayor signs them, once they pass this council. And once that happens, they can be, violators of the zoning code can be cited immediately by the Department of Building and Housing. I think what the director is speaking on is that once the tobacco retail license goes into effect and he has inspectors out inspecting for the licensing, part of their licensing checklist in the future will be the window signage to help building and housing code enforcement. But if you were to make a call and say this passes tomorrow about full coverage window signage or more than 25%, Chief Building Official Vanover and his team will send out code enforcement officers to cite people, write up violation notices, and instruct people to, on either how to appeal those or to submit a signed permit application.
Councilman Casey, can I have a point?
Please.
So, unbeknownst to a lot of people, the police department also has the ability to cite building and housing codes. That's correct. A lot of people don't know that. So why wouldn't we give all of the departments, building and housing, health department, and the police department, and those outward-facing organizations the ability to cite so that we can have a force multiplier as opposed to just relying on building and housing? Because I have the same question for them. And I don't know if that's along the lines of what Councilman Casey is talking about, but how can we make sure that all of these departments have the statutory authority to cite people with those issues?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I mean, obviously Chief Todd is in support of it because she wrote a letter, but why aren't the police department enforcing it too? I mean, it's.
So is there a clause that we could look at to expand the authority to not just be the health department, but include the police and building and housing?
So it automatically includes building and housing because building and housing is
Okay.
the enforcement arm of the zoning code.
So where would we
and-
be able to add if we wanted to add the police?
And I believe that the police, as you just stated, they're allowed to state it as well. So I could work with Chief Todd as well as the Deputy of Public Safety and Chief Vanover in terms of making sure that the enforcement arm is handled. They are aware, each department is aware of this window signage that's coming
So
through.
do we need to legislate that?
It's already in the code.
Okay, so it's already in the code.
All right.
Councilman Casey, you
All
have
right.
the floor.
Yeah, again, Mr. Chairman, to the director, I mean, again, headlines are nice, but this body is looking for enforcement. This wasn't an easy sell. You worked on me for a while on this piece of legislation. And even Councilman Conwell. But if this doesn't have teeth to it, and it's got teeth to it, but if it doesn't have enforcement to it, then we're just here spinning our wheels. And please, I would hate to get you at the budget table next February and not have enforcement anything because you've got your 6 months, you've got everything you need now in place, so now it's up to you to deliver. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Spencer. Councilwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and everyone. I apologize. I'm a little bit of the slow kid in school today. I need a little extra instruction time. So I know this has been heard in committee, and there's been much discussion about this. I'm not totally getting everything. So let me think about where I'm going to start. So this 42 new permit applications. What are those 42, through the chair, what are those 42 new permit applications for exactly?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, they are for permit applications to use an existing use as a smoke shop. So once the legislation hit the news stations, I believe it alerted many of the people that are actually selling more than 20% of their products are smoke shops from floor to ceiling. They submitted use permits through the Department of Building and Housing to use their establishment. So it could be a standalone smoke shop. It could be a gas station that's been selling tobacco and other convenience items, but now they're selling smoke shop products. It could be your local corner store that's selling, that meets the definition of smoke shop that we're defining here today.
Thank you. So through the chair, it's a use permit for a smoke shop.
What is
all.
that?
To become designated as a smoke shop. It's a use permit to become designated as a smoke shop.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman. So when you open a business in the city of Cleveland, you must have a certificate of occupancy.
Okay.
But sometimes you have businesses that are operating multiple businesses within one tenant space. And so when you're doing something supplementary or accessory or as a main use, you need to establish use. And in this case, we are establishing the definition of a smoke shop because of the prevalence of this use across the city.
Thank you. And did this use as smoke shop exist prior to now, through the chair?
Through the chair to the councilman, it existed, yes, in terms of what people are doing. They're selling these mind-altering substances. The city of Cleveland didn't define a smoke shop in our zoning code, but the zoning code allows for things like, sales of X is similar to other types of sales. And so even though we didn't actually define the term smoke shop, we are defining it in this legislation. In terms of how does that use exist prior to us, quote unquote, defining it in the code and it not being listed in the code, under our retail sections, we allow other similar retail uses. And so tobacco sales has been legal for a long time, and so this is similar to that.
So do we have a sense of, I'm just trying to, okay, I think what I'm trying to do is narrow in on the grandfathering question that I know has been discussed previously. I think it's a really, really important point. So, right, there's a separate definition of tobacco retailers, right? And those are any establishment, I want to make sure I understand this, through the chair, tobacco retailers are any establishment who sells any tobacco product, but not necessarily 20% of their shelf space. So, whatever. So anyone who wants to sell tobacco in the city of Cleveland needs a tobacco retailer license. Is that accurate through the chair?
That is, currently you don't need a tobacco retail license, but that's what this
don't.
legislation is establishing in number
Okay.
187. Ordinance 187 is establishing the retail license, but being able to sell tobacco in corner stores, retail stores, Family Dollars, things of that nature across the city has long been an established use. You haven't needed a use permit to sell tobacco like you need a liquor license to sell liquor. But in the zoning code, we are establishing the term smoke shop. If you look in chapter 347 of the code, throughout the years, there's various uses or business types, if you will, that have created kind of a decrease in the quality of life in our neighborhoods that we have regulated for. So to give an example, small box discount retail stores have been around since, I don't know, the 40s, 50s, but we really didn't define them and legislate them until 2022. And so, again, that's another, it's another example of the type of use, even though it's not defined in the code explicitly, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Okay, so let me recap, and I really do want to come back to this grandfathering question. So this suite of legislation will establish a tobacco retail license, and I heard $200 to $300 a year or thereabouts.
Through the chair, 300 to 500.
300 to 500 a year, okay? So 300 to 500 a year for all of these existing establishments, no matter whether they are a smoke shop or not. Any establishment that sells any tobacco product, whether they are a smoke shop or not, must now apply for and obtain a tobacco retail license. Is that an annual license through the chair?
Through the chair, correct.
Okay, so 300 to 500 annually for any and all establishments that wish to sell tobacco. Okay, so separately, there's this smoke shop designation. And smoke shops, not to oversimplify, but those would be ones that are 20% or more of their display and their product are tobacco and product related. Okay, is that accurate?
Yeah, it's a smoke shop product. So the THC, hemp, kratom, things of that
All
nature.
those things, okay. So I want to go back to this 42 permit. So how many smoke, do we know, so there was something about 400 to 600 existing tobacco retailers citywide. Do we know how many smoke shops existed before? This is what I'm trying to figure out. How many smoke shops existed before this 42, this wave of 42 new applications in January of 2025? Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, that's a great question, thank you. So I want to be clear that we estimate that there's probably roughly 400 plus smoke shops operating currently. That does not mean that they are actually legally established to be smoke shops. So the 42 permit applications that have come into the city, and it's actually closer to 100 at this point since January 5th or January 1st, has been to establish use to obtain that use permit to become a legally established occupancy as a smoke shop. The actual amount of smoke shops that are actually operating, that does not necessarily mean that they actually have a legally established use on file.
So that through the chair, that 400 to 600 number is for what we would now seek to define as smoke shops, not just a supermarket where I can go in and buy a pack of cigarettes. You're talking about 400 to 600 smoke shop type establishments existing.
Through the chair.
Without a license.
You're right to be confused. It is confusing. We don't have a system currently, and that's what we'll correct. So that 400 to 600 estimate is based on about a year ago, the health department went through extensively Googling, to find who was selling. There's been an estimate of 618. One organization took a look and saw 618. There was no good estimate of smoke shops out there, so the Department of Planning worked to come up with an estimate based on Google as well and came up with 400. So that adding all those together, you're right, it could be much higher, but that's why we're also, working on this.
Okay, so then knowing that there are all these establishments that have been operating, who gets grandfathered? Who gets grandfathered? And also, I think there's been a lot of concern from the body about the very idea of grandfathering. So I kind of want to see if I can ask the right question about that. But who gets grandfathered? Yes, through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman. So to answer your question, even though the Department of City Planning and the Department of Public Health have a rough estimate of the amount of smoke shops we believe that are out there, the only ones that will be grandfathered in are those that submitted their permit application to establish use and either were given that use or they were prior to the implementation of this legislation.
So it could be up to 100?
Across the city, that's correct. So this map that I have here are all of the permit applications that we have received as of up until this past Friday, I believe April 11th. And so these are all applications pending. The only one that has been approved is in Ward 2. The numbers that you see here are your actually ward numbers, and the light-colored dots are the location of the permit applications. And I can get you a list of all of them for each ward sent to the council, each of you, if you would like, or I can send it to your council clerk, or I can send it to the attorney.
You can send it to our policy person, it'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be
definitely do
helpful
that.
to have that map. So in terms of grandfathering, is it for both the license, the permit, and the window covering? Or is it, so what gets grandfathered?
We received several permits for occupancy for smoke shops and sign permits for smoke shops. Any application that comes in before the effective date of a legislation or legislative piece will be regulated on the regulations at the time of application. And so in this case, the smoke shops that have come in as basically like a C-store type retail establishment, but they are asking for the use permit as a smoke shop, will be permitted so long as they meet all other zoning code. There are a couple applications that I do know offhand that have some other zoning code issues, such as their parking lots, landscaping, things of that nature, that will end up at the Board of Zoning Appeals if the applicant chooses to appeal. But in terms of the
I'm
use-
trying to get there, Mr. Chair.
Oh, no,
So to clarify,
I'm laughing at something else.
so to clarify, the window covering would also be grandfathered through the chair.
No. Most people that are covering their windows from top to bottom across all windows do not actually have permits for their signs. So the only applications that have come in for signs, in terms of smoke shop signs, has generally been a business identification wall type sign. But window signs, we have not really seen that many permits for, and the ones that we have been issued letters of nonconformance already under the code as it relates to business signage.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that there's, I know I heard this from my colleagues when we were at the table at DPS, just the idea of, so in knowing that there's been 100 that have come in since, this is why this has to be approved today, passed with all due haste, right? To put a line in the sand, a time stamp. This is the time past which you will not get grandfathered, okay? In theory, with those 100 that have come in, would we have already maxed out or exceeded based on the buffers?
Yes.
Are we done at that point? Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I can also send another map that was mapped last week on Friday. We are done. The only section that's available is along the Cuyahoga River in downtown Cleveland. We haven't had a permit come in, Councilman McCormick, yet. But that is the only place left in the entire city, based on the permit applications that have come in, based on the 2-mile buffer, and based on the 500-foot buffer.
So we maxed.
But I will also note, we've maxed out in terms of permit applications. We would deny it, and then if the applicant wanted to appeal, they'd have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, where you all could weigh in, as well as the neighbors, as to whether that was a use that was warranted at that location.
So here's my last, this is why I reference being kind of a slow kid in school today. This is my vibe today. I apologize, everybody. If the smoke shop designation didn't exist previously, how are they applying for this use? If it didn't exist, why is everybody getting grandfathered in? If it's a brand-new use that we're now establishing through this legislation?
Yeah, so the way that the Cleveland zoning code and zoning codes across the country work is that in each level, if you will, or district, zoning district, you have what's known as the other clause. And basically, essentially what it says is, when we talk about variety stores, C stores, and other similar stores, this would qualify under those other similar stores. A good example, like I was saying, was, under the small box discount retail legislation that was passed, I believe, in 2022, we had never defined small box discount retail, but that very definition was essentially like your dollar stores, family dollar stores, et cetera, or Five Below, those types of stores that already existed in the city. And so when that legislation passed, now that we've defined small box discount retail stores, those stores that were already existing were able to continue to exist, but any new applications would be subjected to the new rules and regulations.
Okay, thank you. So, and then what is the date after which you can submit, but you're no longer grandfathered, if this legislation is approved by the full body today?
As soon as the effective date goes in. So if the effective date is this is approved by council today and the mayor signs it today or tomorrow, it's effective immediately.
Okay.
And so any application that comes in, as soon as he signs or you all sign, it becomes effective immediately under the emergency ordinance. And so therefore, at that point, we would take those applications in, review them and adjudicate them. And at that point, they would obviously they would be denied.
As a follow-up, Mr. Chair, and to our staff, could we have, once that timestamp is established, once we know that go, no-go, could we have a list of those that have applied in each ward? You have that. So in other words, if I have smoke shops in my ward that I know for a fact didn't apply, what would be the next step to, for lack of a better word, disestablish their use?
Are you stating that if the list that I have doesn't correspond to the list that you all have of the smoke shops that you see existing?
Just smoke shops that I'm aware of.
That you're aware
Yeah.
of? You can submit a 311 complaint, and the enforcement officers will go out and issue the violation.
The violation would be through the chair for non-conformance of use?
No use permit.
No use permit.
Or signage, if it's a signage issue.
Okay. All right.
And then through the chair, once the health department's system is up in the 180 days, our team will be enforcing that aggressively.
Okay. So I think that follow-up's going to be really important, just because I think this is newsworthy. This is 4 pieces of legislation. Our residents are going to hear about it. They're going to be excited about it, seeking relief. And I think our offices are going to get questions about who's established the use, who hasn't, and then for those who haven't, what are the next steps and consequences? All right, thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Just a couple of follow-up. And I know that we have Director Martin here, but if we're going to have building and housing and police that are also available to issue tickets, why are we putting all fees and fines that are collected into a special tobacco enforcement and education fund? Why isn't it not just going to the general fund? And it's my understanding, because I'm going to call this the building and housing question that people have asked for years. If building and housing is charging fees, why can't they charge fees that can help support their staff, whereas this is allowing you to charge fees to help bolster your staff? And I had always been taught that that is an unvoted tax, that we cannot just allocate fees to one department to cover. So are we not in compliance, and should this money be going straight to the general fund?
Thanks, through the chair. So that's a reference to 187.
Yeah, and specifically 235A.10.
Yep. Yeah, so through the chair, we are able to assess those fees to the cost of enforcement. That's how all the other cities do it. And so that's the model that we're recommending, and this has gone through legal and administrative review.
Only thing that I want to be very careful about is I don't want to start going down a slippery slope where all the departments want to kill what they eat. Because if every department just gets to fund their department based on their enforcement actions, police, fire, building and housing, and when that starts to happen, then there's other departments that will not benefit that. When you're talking about 400 people that's going to be responsible for doing about $300 licenses, that's a pretty heavy chunk that we're talking about go to one department. So I do have some reservations about anything going to one department, and I'm going to rely on my colleagues to correct me if I'm wrong, but is there any other department that we assess fees that go directly towards paying for the operations of that department? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so through the chair, yes. So that's what we do with our food fees as well.
So is it because you're more of a reimbursement department as opposed to being operating out of the general fund? Is that the reason why?
Through the chair, it could be half of our expenses in our department.
I tell you what,
we grants and
we
reimbursements.
really want to get this done. This is a very important piece of legislation. I'm going to ask that our policy team with Ms. Magistro and the finance team look further into this. If we need to, we may have to come back and amend to make sure that this goes to the general fund, because putting it in an account that you guys are just going to be appropriating, I think doesn't give council authority the right type of purview. And it also, if you got 3 different types of departments that can actually put into this, then if I'm the building and housing or police department, I'm not going to be motivated to try to help health departments, bottom line, by these tickets that we write. So I do want to make sure that we revisit that, because I've always been told that that's an unvoted tax. And we can go down a slippery slope if other departments start trying to use their fees in order to support their department, because recreation would get nothing, whereas building and housing and police will be flush with cash. There's a legal opinion based on that? If you could, Attorney O'Leary?
Yeah, through the chair.
Please put your microphone on.
Through the chair to the councilperson and the committee, I had spoken to Stephanie Melnick in the law department about this fund and all the different things it's allowed to be used for enforcement and education materials and everything, and law did opine that this is an allowable use. I can't speak to the other departments and whether this could be done in other departments, but in this particular ordinance, the law department looked into it, and it is legal.
Okay, and I'm okay if the lawyers and everybody say that it's legal. I just want to caution this body that that's a very slippery slope if we're going to start letting everybody just, kill what they eat, which means charging the fees for, the department that they have, because then that means all these departments are going to have to start being like enterprise accounts and start trying to operate where they only charge the fees that they can pay for, and it messes around with our general fund, and we're going to have a problem. So just keep that in mind, and we'll be watching that closely. But if legal has made an opinion, and we're going to just have to monitor this closely, okay? And please, all the other departments, I don't want them coming with that same kind of, well, you did it for health department, you need to do it for building and housing. I see Director Martin back there now, like she would love to have the fees support her department. You know what I mean? And I
Not
think
the
council
general
would love to get the fees to beef her staff up. So I just want to caution us, that's a slippery slope, okay? Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 186-2025, ordinance number 187-2025 as amended, ordinance number 188-2025 as amended, and ordinance number 189-2025 as amended stand approved. Please sign on. Great work. I know that it's been a long time for us to get to this point, but we've been very intentional about making sure that we have something that's very noteworthy, and we think this is it, okay? So thank you guys, and thank you for your good work, Ms. Leonard and Ms. O'Leary, okay? Thank you. I'm going to ask if my colleague, Councilman Kerry McCormick, can take over the gavel for me for a moment. And I have two things that I have to do very quick, okay?
All righty. We are now going to go to, let's see, these are council.
And that's for.
What do we got? What's the last one in there?
That's just for Spitzer.
338. Director of Building Housing Transfer and 101.
That's the one that we held earlier. Okay. Building and housing, come on up. Ordinance number 338, 2025 by Councilmembers Harrison and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Building and Housing to enter into one or more contracts with Crow LLP for additional professional services necessary to perform lead-safe auditor services for a period of 3 years. Director, 338.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. This is a piece of financial legislation that just allows us to move forward with a contract with our lead-safe auditor, which is required under our city's lead-safe ordinance. So we just seek passage of this financial kind of housekeeping issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And can you explain, were we with Case before and now we're with Crow? Can you explain that change?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We sought to do a more detailed audit than we had done in the past about the efficacy of the lead-safe ordinance. So we went with a typical auditing firm that does a lot of municipal auditing. So we felt that was a better fit.
Got it. All right. What questions do I have on 338, 2025? Hearing none, 33825 stands approved. Please sign. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Alrighty, I've got, Director, are you here for a piece? Is this your walk-on? Can you pass me the white one, please? Come on up. Okay, an emergency, ordinance number 500, 2025 by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request. Emergency ordinance approving the collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council, fingerprinters and scientific examiners, and to amend Section 28 of Ordinance 194, 2021, passed March 29, 2021, as amended by Ordinance number 1284, 2022, passed December 5, 2022, relating to compensation for various classifications. Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. Yes, this is to ratify excuse me, the contract with the FOP, Ohio Labor Council, the fingerprinters and the scientific examiners unit. This is a successor agreement from April 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2028.
Okay, and our rates here are 3, 2.75, and 2.50. Is
That's
that correct?
Yes, sir.
Agreed upon by all parties.
Yes.
What questions do I have on the ratification of fingerprint examiner and scientific examiner?
Chairman.
Councilman Polensek.
To the Director, besides the pay recommendations, is there anything else that should stand out to us about this collective bargaining unit?
Through the chair to the councilman, no, this is a pretty standard standard set of negotiations. We incorporated some language that was that we're doing with many of the bargain units related to vacation leave.
Okay.
Some of the other, changes that were passed for non-bargaining previously through city ordinance and policy.
How many are in this bargaining unit?
Through the chair to the councilman, this is a fairly small bargain unit. I believe there are 10 currently.
Okay. And they agreed, they ratified it.
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, it's been ratified.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. In Section 6, amend to reflect city policy on THC as a prohibited substance. Does that mean we're testing for marijuana?
To the chairman, yes. So THC is still a prohibited substance under our policy.
I thought we weren't doing that anymore.
That's only for certain pre-employment
Okay.
pre-employment tests that don't actually directly relate to non-safety or security services, service-based positions.
So given
for the
that it's
city.
legal now in Ohio, have we had that conversation about that policy? Is that ongoing?
To the chair, it is, and it will continue to be ongoing, especially as the testing for current use or the ability to determine whether or not someone is currently under the influence,
Right.
Becomes more advanced.
Okay. Any additional questions on 500-2025? No. Hearing none, this will be considered by the body this evening. Thank you, Director. Ordinance 423-2025 by Councilmembers Gray, an emergency ordinance to amend the name Jonah Moore Senior Way as a secondary and honorary name to Dickens Avenue between East 93rd Street and Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. Is the councilwoman here today? All right. Are there any questions on 423-2025? Hearing none, please sign. Ordinance 469-2025 by Councilmember House Jones, emergency resolution recognizing National Black Maternal Health Week, April 11th to April 17th, 2025, and declaring this week Black Maternal Health Week in the city of Cleveland and honoring the efforts of Black-led organizations driving systemic change in maternal health and committing to supporting initiatives that provide equity, healing, and thriving communities. Do I have any questions on 469, a resolution by Councilwoman House Jones? Hearing none, ordinance 469-2025 stands approved. Clerk, it looks like that's all I got. Alrighty, this Committee of Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion of Cleveland City Council stands adjourned.